Well,
All right.
okay. Before we start our show, I'm I'm going to say something that I usually don't say on these shows, but if anybody out there is listening, if you can subscribe and like our show, that'd be much appreciated. Just because it helps us, and that's the end of that.
Okay.
So, Anyway, and our movie today is The Day the World Ended. Yay!
Ba, ba, ba.
Yay! Produced and directed by Roger Corman. All right, one of his early movies, I believe.
Yeah. He also sort of starred in it.
He is a photograph in
Yes.
it. Yeah, he is a photograph in it. And at the end, she turns the photo down. Would they ever talk about what happened to him? He was Tommy, right? Did he like get killed or something before the movie or?
No, he disappeared during the war.
Oh,
during
okay.
during the
Nuclear war. Anyway, getting back to The Day the World Ended with Richard Denning, who likes to roll up his sleeves
and look serious.
And look serious. Touch Connors before Mannix.
That made me laugh. Touch Connors.
Touch Connors, yeah. Well, his real name is a hard to pronounce
Yeah,
name.
Mikolowski or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Episca, yeah, something really tough. Paul Birch, who was in Not of This Earth. Lori Nelson, who was in, I think, Revenge of the Creature. Adele Jergens, who was in a lot of movies. And apparently she was a very nice lady in this movie.
She was a stripper
one
with
of the
a heart of
mutants.
gold. She was a
What's that?
stripper with a heart of gold.
She was a stripper with a heart of gold. Aren't they all? No, not really. Not really. And then who else is in this movie? Well, Jonathan Hayes from Little Shop of Horrors shows up as a mutant later on in the movie, and produced and directed by Corman. Probably is like his third movie. It was released through ARC. I forget what the initial stands for, but this is AIP. It later became AIP. It's James Nicholson and what's his face, Arkoff.
Samuel J. Arkoff.
So. Yeah, we originally were going to do another End of the World movie, but I found this one on there. I said, well, this one actually looks better than Future Hunters. So, and I've seen it before.
Yeah, me too.
So we decided to go dystopian.
I saw this when I was a little kid, and
Did you really?
In fact, I've seen it several times, and then I watched it recently. I don't know, about a year or two ago. But when I was a kid,
wow.
I didn't really pay that much attention to the movie plots. I was just looking for the monsters and the special effects and stuff. So I had this whole thing, the whole plot of this movie wrong when I first watched it when I was, it was like 8 or something like that.
I mean, I got it on, what was it, VHS years ago, and then they released it on DVD. But I remember back in, it must have been in the 90s, that I think Arkoff was putting these out as, they were single features, they weren't double features, but they were putting out like Teenage Caveman and this and Viking Women and all that stuff. So that's when I first saw it. I never saw it as a kid.
Yeah, so
I guess the one I remember seeing as a kid was the other nuclear movie, Panic in the Year Zero, with Ray Milland and Avalon.
That's the movie.
Avalon.
That's
one
the
I
I'm like, this
kid.
reminds me of another movie. What the hell is it? And that's the one, Panic in the Year Zero.
Yeah. Which was, I think, a little bit later, but I think it was a better produced movie.
Yeah.
So we're already dealing with the end of the world, atomic stuff, and radiation, and mutant monsters, and all that fun stuff.
Yep. So it starts with Chet Huntley, the newsman, reading out some, I don't know, very.
Good night, David. Good night, Chet.
Yes.
Remember the Huntley-Brinkley Report? We're old.
He was reading, I don't know, something very serious about nuclear war and blah blah blah. And I think it started with the end, and and then there's a
it did, yeah.
You see the mushroom cloud from the nuclear explosion and stuff, and then there's this little box canyon that's surrounded by lead-bearing ore, and this father and his daughter have moved in there, and he's been planning for this. I don't know how long, because he used to run he was the captain of a ship that was there during the nuclear tests, and he was hauling test animals, and he saw how they were mutated from the radiation. So he's there, and you see him first, and they have all stockpiles of supplies and stuff. She's all worried because her fiance is missing, and he's out. He was outside somewhere in the outside world when the bomb or the war hit, and so she's hoping he's still alive, and he's by the radio. This is Paul Birch, her dad. He's by the radio playing, with I think it's a shortwave radio, and he's looking for signs of life, like people broadcasting and stuff. So then you see
he had been preparing for the end for years, because he was I think he was in war, and he knew what nuclear would do, and so he's basically the first survivalist.
So he's
you would think, though, if he had 10 years of preparation, he would have saved food for more than 3 people. But okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah, because it didn't seem like you had a long stockpile, so I was wondering how long he was hoping to survive.
Yeah, I guess he was sort of preparing for him, his daughter, and Tommy.
So anyway, then you see, I think it's first is.
The first is Denning bringing in the mutant,
I thought it was
right?
Touch Connors. I thought it was.
Was it Touch?
His
okay.
Girlfriend, and they find the house.
Somehow they were driving around in the the canyon, and they've ended up there. Luckily for them, it was like, according to Paul Birch, the ore in the mountains would keep the radiation from coming in or whatever.
So. And there was a box canyon that had rivers that would run into it, empty into a stream, in a waterfall pool and whatever. So they come in, and he's trying to shoot his way in, and the father says, "No, we got to leave them outside." And she's like, "Oh, but Dad, I can't live with myself if we leave people outside." So he lets them in, and then Chuck Connors tries to take over, and he's acting all, tough. He's a tough guy, and his girl.
Oh yeah, he's a gangster.
And his girlfriend, she's a stripper and a gun mall and all that, whatever. And then she has a heart of gold.
And
then you see this guy walking, and he's got radiation on his face, and he's stumbling, and he falls down. And then Richard Denning comes along, sees him, and then helps him, carries him, and then he goes to the house, and they let him in, and he's like, and Paul Birch is like, "Oh, you shouldn't have brought him in. He's irradiated." And Denning's like, "Well, I can't just leave him out there. He's a human being," that kind of thing. And so Birch pulls out his Geiger counter, and it's like, he's checking the radiation guy. And he's like, "Oh, he's got high radiation. He may not survive the night." So he has everybody go in and change their clothes, because they got to burn them, because they have radiation on them, and to wash themselves down with special water. So then Mike Connors comes out.
Chuck Connors, no,
and he's
different
all
guy.
like tough, and he's trying. I'm going to take control of that and stuff. So then Richard Denning comes up behind him, sees him, and then they start fighting and battling, and then the daughter, the gun gets knocked out of Connors' hand, and the daughter picks it up and gives it to the dad. And he's like, "I'm in charge. You got to do what what we told if we're going to stay alive, and it's going to be hard. We have to go on half rations and blah blah blah." And all the while, Connors is seething underneath, and he's PO'd at Denning for beating him up and stuff. So then it's they're all the men are sleeping in the father's area, the women are sleeping together, and Paul Birch sleeps on the couch. He's watching out, and then this old timer comes in with his donkey, and he's they allow him into. So, well, can I bring my donkey into the kitchen? She doesn't like being alone. It's like, no, you got to leave him outside. All right, okay. He's all PO'd and stuff, and then he's going on about how he found this rich vein of gold, and
he's a gold miner from what? From like the 1800s like or something.
I think he got lost on his way to a Gunsmoke episode.
Something like that, yeah.
So they're there, and they're it's the father's always checking the radio, listening to see if there's any broadcasts, and they're all bored and trying to deal with things. And Denning.
But they do have records, though. I think
they have records.
They have records.
Books. They have books too. And Denning is a geologist. And Paul Birch, like I said, he was a captain of some ship that had test animals. And there's some talk about radiation and what it does to people. And then in the meantime, Chuck Connors, he takes a fancy to the daughter. And the gun mall is jealous of her, and they don't really fight though. That's one good thing. She's like, just what?
What's interesting to me? The gun mall I don't think she ever made a play for Richard Denning.
Oh, she threatened to. She said,
she did threaten to. Okay,
but she didn't. She never did. She was really a nice. She kept trying to get back with Connors, and he kept pushing her away. So Denning and the girl, they're slowly hanging out, talking, and falling in love. And on the one hand, but on the other hand, she's still sort of pining away for her fiance, who was, she has a picture of her and him, and in the picture it's a photo of her, and actually it's Roger Corman. So she's, still, so she's kind of conflicted. And everybody's getting on each other's tensions and worries, and then in the meantime, the guy who's irradiated, he feels stronger, but he wants red meat, so he can go out into the radiation area beyond the canyon, and he needs to kill and eat animals, and that's what he's been doing, and. So the tensions are getting high. Mike Connors is trying to get with the girl, and then at some point you see the radiation guy. There's some rabbit trapped, and so he goes and he kills and to eat the rabbit. And then you see this monster coming along, and it's a big hairy thing, man-sized. It's got a really pointed head, 3 eyes. It's got little arms.
Well, you see it from far away. From the first time, you see him from far away and blurry.
He's
so
got
you don't
little
really
arms coming out of his shoulder, and he's got like 3 horns, and that's played by the makeup artist Paul Blaisdell.
Let me ask you a question. Maybe I missed it in this movie, and I don't want to give away anything, so don't listen for whatever. Was that monster? Was that monster supposed to be Tommy or no?
That's why. Yeah,
it wasn't it?
That's why he tried to talk.
That's why she had
sort of
psychic
like a connection with him, and then there was the scene near the end where she goes into some protective water and he can't go in, and he's sort of like motioning her like in sort of a helpless way that he wants her, and so he I guess because of his.
Well, yes. We gave something away, but was it explained?
Very subtly at the very end, and we'll get to that. So anyway, he sees this monster and he runs away, and it's like, oh, this monster's out there to kill me, and so he keeps leaving it in the middle of the night, and to go out into the radiation area to kill and eat food. And
Yeah, he was with his people. You know,
and in the meantime, Mike Connors he's trying to get with the daughter. And at one point he grabs her and kisses her, and she's like pushing him away, and which pisses off Denning. So later on, Denning and he start a fight and looking each other over. And
did you notice in that fight it was really obvious at some point that it was
two totally
different looking
slightly different builds, different hair, and that's a common thing.
You can tell that Corman was a novice. Yeah. Because he wasn't even able to hide it that.
So they're fighting, and then Denny knocks
him out and puts him in his place,
and which makes Mike Connors even more angry and stuff. So at some point, the girls are going to the waterfall. And there's a pool there, and then the pool splashing around, and the gun mall says to the daughter, "Hey, that Tony, Mike Connors, he's really, he really fancies you, but you better be careful of him." And she's like, "Oh, I'm not interested in him." And the gun mall says, "Well, you better not be, otherwise I'm going to hit on Richard Denning." But it was all kind of friendly. It wasn't like you would usually see in these movies where they have like a cat fight or whatever. And then as they're swimming around,
unfortunately, no cat fight.
And as they're swimming around, there's you see some movement in the bushes. You don't really see the monster yet.
And she's psychic with
has
this
some
monster.
Kind of connection which you don't know yet. That she's like, something's calling me. I hear something. And she's like, "Oh, well, you kind of." The gun mall is like, "Wow, you're kind of jumpy." She says, "Well, let's go back to the house." And so they start walking, and the girl says, "Well, let's go down, through the river because that way it's quicker and easier and stuff." So as they're walking, they see these footprints, and they're both like, "Oh!" And then the gun mall starts to take her because she didn't believe her at first, and then she starts to take her seriously. So then they go back, tell the father and Richard Denning. And who come and look and at the footprints and like, oh, there's something in the woods and the mountains. They're they're starting to come into the valley looking for food, and pretty soon when all the food's gone, they're going to try to get us. So they start putting a guard on at night, and to watch the house and make sure there's no nothing's coming close. And then at some point they find like footprints near the house, and like, oh, they're getting closer, we got to be real careful and stuff. And then in the meantime, you see the old timer, the gold mine guy. He's making hooch, with a still.
From sugar. She brings them like sugar, and she goes, if you're gonna make any of that moonshine, get some for me.
Like, well, it's for my donkey Diablo, and they're like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, okay, but when you're done, let me know when you're done with the hooch because I want some. And in the meantime, she keeps. Then she's doing. Everybody's sitting around listening to the music, and Mike in this movie, Mike Connors always looks PO'd and pissed and annoyed and stuff. So everybody's sitting around. So she's doing she doesn't take her clothes off, but she's doing her act. And then after she finishes, she realizes what's going on. She starts crying, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're feeling sad and stuff." And
she's feeling sad because it's the end of the world. It's like
and it's always threatening to rain. And the Paul.
Yeah, and Paul Birch keeps thinking that the rain could make it more nuclear.
It's going to be the rain is going to be irradiated, which would then and the valley, instead of being protected from the radiation, the rain's falling down and going to irradiate everything. So everybody's always like worried that they're going to end up dead and stuff. So then when they find the footprints by the house, that's when Paul Birch brings Denning into his studio, his den, and tells him about, that he was a captain at the nuclear test site, and he he dropped off, and then he picked up a ship full of test animals in cages, and then all the animals died except for 3. So, and he did sketches of them, very crude sketches too. Oh my God!
Cartoon
so
sketches.
One was
cool.
chipmunk, and except that this chipmunk had long claws, saber-toothed fangs, and horns coming out of its head. The second one was a dog. Same thing. It had horns out of its head and saber teeth. And then the third one was a monkey, and it had a big pointed head and long ears, 3 eyes, fangs, and like horns coming out of its head. So, and then he was talking about the skin. The skin was kind of rubbery and stuff, but the monkey, it lasted the longest, and its skin was like metal. And then, Denning's like, oh, so that was nature's armor against radiation. So at some point you see the monster. I forget when exactly, but you see him walking around, and he keeps looking at the house, and he keeps hanging around, and there's a scene where the radiation guy comes in, and he's saying, there's something out there that wants to kill me, and he's dangerous, so I got to be careful. And Denning, he's talking to Denning, and Denning's like, well, what is out there on the other side of before that, there's a scene where Paul, Birch, and Denning are looking around. They're going up the trail up to the only trail outside the canyon, and then they're talking about how the radiation, what's out there, and how the wild animals are changing, and the rain's threatening. And then this guy comes walking in, and he's got all weird hands with 3 claws and radiation on his face, and he falls down, and he's like, oh, I'm so hungry, I need food. And it's like, what happens? Oh, they're out there, they're like me, but they're stronger. And it's like, so he's that's telling you that there are other people out there beyond the canyon who are victims of radiation, and they're mutating.
Yeah, they're mutating. They're changing. This guy, the guy who was with them is like in the first stage,
whatever his name is. And then this guy was the second stage, where his arms and his feet were like the monkey that Paul Birch saw a long time ago, and then it looks like the tracks that the girls found. So then you see the monster walking around, and you see his face, and he's always like by the house, and then you see the daughter, and you hear this sort of like weird sound. It's almost like a weird ringing, and she's like, do you hear that? Something's calling me and stuff. So they find footprints near the house, and that's when the Birch and Denning start guarding the house at night. And there's one point where so the radiation guy, he's really hungry, so he takes the this is at night, he takes the donkey out into the forest area to kill it and eat it. So he kills it, and then the 3-eyed triangle head monster comes up behind him and grabs him by the neck and kills him. And then Richard Denning, he's patrolling the area, and he goes and he sees that the donkey's gone. So he goes to Paul Birch. The donkey's gone. Our radiation guy took him. And so they go out looking, but they both got.
And then the old man.
Yeah, so the old man sees his donkey's gone, and then Mike Connors is like, okay, so we gotta go. Well, I'll help you look for your donkey. And in the meantime, while they're away, you see before that, there was a scene where the daughter is called out for something, and Mike Connors grabs her and kidnaps her, and then the gun mall goes after them, and she's like, you can't have her. She's no good for you. We used to. It's you and me, and she's trying to get him back, and he's like, you disgust me. You're no good. So then the daughter runs away. She runs back to the house, and in the meantime, the gun mall and Connors are arguing, and he stabs her and kills her and throws her off a cliff. And
well, I thought that was done outside.
Because there was this scene where Mike Connors kidnaps the daughter with a knife. So anyway, so then he comes back, and it's like there's no big deal. He's like, she was.
This is a soap opera at this point. This is one big soap opera.
Well, she's gone, or she went. They didn't really address it in the movie. So,
They just threw her over a cliff, and you see her like bouncing all over.
So then, the old guy and Mike Connors, they're out looking for the donkey. Richard Denning and Paul Birch, they're looking for the guy to kill him because they know he's soon going to turn into a type 2 mutant and kill them for food. And in the meantime, you see the shadow of the monster at the daughter's window, and she hears the noise, and so she goes. She starts walking around in the daze. So and in the meantime, who is it?
Well, first of all, it wasn't Paul Birch already like.
Not yet.
Okay, when Paul Birch went out there, he got hit with radiation.
The donkey died, and the old geezer. After his donkey died, he went out into the. That's right. He went out into the thing.
And the old man guy, and the old man died in the
old man is like, well, now that my donkey's dead, I'm going back to my gold vein in the mountains, and he dies.
Right. And he starts. Yeah,
it's a bit of convoluted this soap opera thing. So anyway.
So at some point, Paul Birch is was hit with radiation when he's going after the old man. So he's hurting. So he's just basically from now on, he's just laying on the couch.
Dying of radiation. So then the monster, he calls the girl out, and she's walking in a daze. And then she sees the monster and faints, and he picks her up and he's walking away with her. So Richard Denning, Paul Birch is like, it's awfully, check on my daughter. She's okay. So he knocks on her door. He's like, oh, she's gone. So Denning takes the rifle, and then he leaves the pistol.
Yeah, Birch tells him to go get some submachine gun. But before that, Denning had given Birch a gun to hide underneath the
So then he goes, and Mike Connors is there, and he's playing all innocent and stuff. So Richard Denning goes out looking for the girl. In the meantime, the monster's carrying the girl. And he puts her down. And throughout
this movie, Mike Connors, has been trying to grab the gun.
He finally grabs the gun that's laying on. I don't know why you would put it on the couch back. Why didn't we just? But anyway.
Yeah, I know.
So he finally grabs the gun, and he's like, "I'm taking over. I'm going to take the girl and leave. And when Richard Denning comes back, I'm going to kill him." And so Paul Burke is like, yeah. So then he's. You see Denning looking for the girl, and the girl is she breaks free from the monster, and she runs into the water, and she's there. She's afraid of it, and the monster.
And the monster's afraid of the water. He can't handle the water.
Beckoning to her to come to him, and she's like confused because something seems familiar about it. So then it starts to rain, and then the monster's off.
Because Richard Denning had taken some shots at the monster, and he was the monster was impervious
so the monster
to the
comes
machine
to go
gun or
him.
whatever.
And
yeah. And she goes, go in the water. Lori Nelson goes, go in the water. Richard goes, go in the water.
Right.
He can't stand the water. And then he jumps in the water, and the monster's like, he's like, I can't do anything.
Yeah,
and then he starts to
the monster's running, and then Denning and the girl come out of the water and follow the monster, and then it's like, you see it raining, and it starts to, like, it gets weaker and weaker, and then it falls down, and as it starts raining, this like smoke coming out of the monster. You know, it fell down dead. In the meantime, Chuck Connors is there, and he's waiting for Denning and the girl to come back. And
Chuck's got a gun now because she wants to shoot
Birch.
him.
So he wants to. And he stole the gun from Paul Birch, but not the gun that. That
underneath the cushion.
So it starts to rain. And then Mike Connors goes, "Well, there's the rain you were worried about." So he.
Yeah, right. Paul Birch tells Mike Connors, "Hey, get a cup of rain and let me test it out."
No radiation in the water. He says, "Oh, the rain is clear and pure." And then he hears on the radio some kind of signal, and I think it's in French or something. So it proves that there are other people out there. So then Mike Connors is waiting, and he sees Denning coming. He's going, "Oh, this is going to be a tricky shot because Denning and the girl are so close together." And he starts taking aim. That's when Paul Birch pulls out the gun under the cushion and shoots him dead. And then
he empties the gun at him.
And then Denning and the girl come in, and he's like, "Oh, he was going to shoot you and kill you and stuff." And they're like, "Oh, your case is I'm dying of radiation poisoning, but I heard a broadcast on the radio, so they're all people out there. So, it's time for you to go out and repopulate the earth." And then
Well, originally he had told, earlier in the movie, he had told his daughter, Lori Nelson, "Hey, I want you to have children with Richard Denning. I want you to marry him." And she was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, you got to do it. Come on." She's trying to feeling.
At that point, when he said it, she was still waiting for her.
She'll wait for Tommy to come back.
As it goes, they're getting ready to leave because the rain came and sort of washed away the radiation. And it was only that easy. So then they're getting ready to leave, and then she goes over. She looks at the photo of her and her fiance Tommy, and then she puts it face down on the dresser, and then it flashes to the monster lying there, and that's the implication that the monster was her fiance that had mutated.
Tommy.
And then you see.
Yeah, because of all the psychic
then that's why he was able
to. Because as soon as the monster died, her intuition, her psychic, whatever, went away.
And that's why the monster was always hanging around the house. So then at the very end, you see Denning and the girl walking hand in hand out of the canyon and into the foggy distance beyond. And then instead of saying the end, it says, "The beginning."
So what they're trying to say is that when the rain came, it cleared out all the radiation.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but I don't think they fully understood radiation at that time.
No.
But at the time when I saw it as a kid, it's like, oh, that makes sense, because the rain was clear and it was from the heavens.
Yeah, within the fairy tale context of a movie. Right. Yeah, sure.
So this radiation actually lasts for like 40,000 years.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it destroys everything and it mutates everything. It's not like, a big storm is going to clear up the whole area. But, within the framework of the story, it's fine,
It was a special kind of radiation. It was water soluble. Dry clean only, this radiation.
There's a bunch of movies that, I believe anyway, influenced Night of the Living Dead. I think this is one of them, with being stuck in a cabin and fighting and the monster outside. There was another one that came out a few years later called Invisible Invaders, where some invisible aliens came to Earth and revived, got into the bodies of dead people and came out of the grave.
Yeah.
And then there was Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. That would have been another one where, you know, at night they're zombie vampires or whatever. You know, I Am Legend. You know, so I think some of these movies kind of influenced Night of the Living Dead and made that what he just took it. Romero took it a step further, but yeah, all this nuclear stuff, being stuck in a cabin, fighting amongst each other. You know, that's definitely
definitely. I mean, that's an old movie trope too. A bunch of people trapped in a building. We even saw that one with the robots from Venus. Yeah, Target Earth. And then you have a bunch of people that was almost similar people, a drunk gangster and his girlfriend, and
made around the same time, I think, or maybe a few years later. I'm not sure, but Target Earth. Definitely.
So it's a very similar trope. And then, you know, you could with Night of the Living Dead, that could be considered an apocalypse. You know, the dead coming back to life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, it was the Matheson.
Yeah.
I Am Legend. Later on, Omega Man with
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, it is what it is. You know, I mean, this is one of those movies where, from what I read, James Nicholson, one of the heads of AIP, told the writer, Lou Rusoff, who I think was related to Arkoff, he said, "Here's a title, Day the World Ended, write me a movie." It was one of those deals.
I don't know if it's this studio. Well, this is, I don't know if it was API or, what's it?
It's ARC first, and then which became AIP.
But they would like do the poster first, and then write a story around it. You know.
Yeah. It was total like, you know, sell the movie first to the distributors, and then here's your movie.
And as long as it had a good monster in it, or you know, some.
Well, yeah, this was a very early Paul Blaisdell, who was the maker of the monster. I think this was one of his earlier movies. He got better later, and I don't think he had much of a budget on this. Maybe like $1,500 or something. So
that worked. He also
got
played the
later.
monster in the movie. Yeah.
He was the monster in the movie, yeah. I read that there was a scene where he's like down on the ground in the actual filming, and he was actually like burning, or he was, you know, couldn't breathe, and they thought he was just acting on the floor like he was dying, and Blaisdell's wife said, "Oh, no. Take the mask off," and they got him and they saved him, so yeah. Well, you know, these movies were like, you know, dangerous for everybody to make, and I don't think Roger Corman was like, let's get the shot done.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's all it is. Roger Corman wasn't a filmmaker. He was an engineering student who figured out a way to convince them to make them, to let him make movies, because he figured he could make them cheap and save them money. And little by little he learned how to do movies better. But he wasn't you know, anything. He from what I read, he knew how to set up the shots. He knew how to, you know, the angles, and he knew like basics, but the actors said that he really didn't work with them. You know, they were kind of like, he's kind of like doesn't care. He doesn't. Well, I mean, I don't know what motivation they would want, but he was like, you know, he could just do the shot, get it done.
He was like
let's move on.
Slightly upgraded version of the guy who did Plan 9 from Outer Space. What was his name? Ed Wood.
Ed Wood. No, Ed Wood was. It was way
but he would like.
Than,
I think everything was one take.
Yeah.
So somebody made a mistake. That's it. It's perfect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back then you had to. I mean, audiences weren't, you know, as quote unquote sophisticated as they are now. So, you know, they kind of like got away with it. But Corman, like, you know, turned it into a career. He got better and better with each movie, though. But you know, I think he did two. I think before this he made a couple of westerns. I think they were okay, but this was his first. And I also read that AIP was making. You know, this was an early movie. Some of the earlier movies, or some of the movies they were making, were being put on a double bill. So then they got the bright idea. Let's just make two cheap movies so we can get the top billing and the lower billing and make. So they were all about making money cheaply and exploiting the horror and getting a good poster to to promote the movie and sell it to
Right.
drive-ins, and then they got Corman to cheaply
exactly.
make it with good actors. They had good actors. The people were good in it. They were professional actors. And some other movies from this era have, or maybe later, they have people that couldn't act their way out of a paper bag, but they spent. I mean, I think I read Carlson got like $7,000 for this movie, which isn't a fortune, but they were giving him money to be in the movie and being the star, of the movie. So they knew how to make. They had the right idea about how to make movies or whatever, and they did get better. But there's all sorts of stories about Corman. I think was better as a producer than a director. So he quit like in the mid '60s or whatever. But because he was really about getting the movie done under budget and and just getting it out in the theaters and making money. That was, and honestly, that was his. I mean, his Poe movies may have been more artistic than these, but he was really about efficiency, getting it done, and making some money off it.
And also, people went to see these movies. They weren't looking for like Gone with the Wind or teenagers.
They were teenagers.
Who,
wanted to go out and
just get out of that on a Friday night
and get drunk and Well, I mean, I've talked about it before. I told you one time that I made a list of all these movies that I saw in the theater, over 300, and I was like, you saw 300 movies? I go, yeah, because it was something to do. It wasn't because every one of them was like a horror movie or a B movie that I liked. It was like, that's the same thing. All of a sudden, here's your local drive-in. What are they playing this week? The Day the World Ended and The Beast from the Haunted Cave, or The Beast from 20,000 Leagues. All right, let's go see it. Something to do. We only got 3 channels on television, maybe.
And then there was.
Yeah, and we got a car, and
you were kind of too young to drink beer, or in the bar anyway. And you didn't want to stay out in the house, and you were tired of just hanging out at the local store. Yeah, Friday night.
It was Friday night. No school on Saturday.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go see where they're playing.
Yeah.
Oh, this thing.
And
let's go.
Your friends would be there too, and then the girls from school, and it was like a teenage. And if you didn't have a beach to go to, which a lot, if you didn't live on the coast, it was kind of thing to do. Is go hang out and have fun and stuff.
Well, yeah, and then go to like Pop's chocolate shop afterwards and have a root beer float or something. I don't know. Whatever they did, or Arnold's from Happy Days or something. I don't know. Whatever, So I mean, it was just something to do, and it really was the same through the 80s, I would imagine, maybe even the early 90s. Go to the movies. All of a sudden, after a while, you got cable, and you got all this screaming and not screaming, but streaming and all this other stuff at home. But back then, it was just like, let's just go out. We're kids, we're young. Let's go out.
Even in the 80s, you'd go to, like Friday night, you'd go be just filled with kids, high school kids, some college kids, hanging out. Even if it was a regular theater, but that they would play the cheapo movies and.
Well, you lived in the city, so I'm sure to a certain extent it was like that. But when you lived in the suburbs, it was a little.
Yeah.
It was different, I mean, it was.
By the time I was a teenager, we had moved to the suburbs. So and then,
there you go.
Some movies, even some old people, they'd go to different theaters to watch different movies, but they would get out of the house because even then, even with cable, there wasn't a lot of stuff on, and Friday night was a dead night. People just wanted to go out and just.
That's exactly right. Thursday night was it was a big night on TV. Yeah. Friday was a dead night, so people got paid and they wanted to go out to do whatever.
Saturday too. Sometimes you'd go out to eat before you'd go to the movie.
Exactly.
And it was, that's when a lot of diners were around, and
exactly.
It's different culture.
I remember when I was a kid, it was like, hey, it's Friday, let's go to McDonald's. That was a big Friday night, McDonald's, yay, all right.
Yeah, my mom didn't drive, so Friday night she was all ready to shop, so everybody be heading out to the damn mall. Oh, yeah,
that's right.
My mom was one of those shoppers who she'd be there in the store shop until the store was closed. And I can remember many a Friday night this is when I was like younger. She wouldn't let me stay home alone to watch TV, so I'd have to go. So like I'm 13, 14, I still have to be led around like a little calf with a nose ring. And we'd be my dad, my sister, and me. We'd be waiting outside the store. They'd have that metal gate halfway down, and they're looking for my mom because they couldn't find her. And finally, and she'd come walking out as if nothing's happening. She's all like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, that's right. I remember when I was a kid, Friday night was
supermarket
night. Go to the supermarket, and then get the TV guide and look through what movies were playing. And Saturday was movie night, or for maybe Sunday. I don't know, but yeah, that's right. Friday was like go to the supermarket and get the food night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was back then. That was then.
And we were raised Catholic, so for my mom, every Friday was
Me too.
Meatless, so it was always spaghetti and fish
sticks.
No!
Oh! We were Catholic, but we didn't follow that.
She would cook the spaghetti, open the jar, and just dump it in, and then she didn't do anything else. And the fish sticks she would bake in the oven, but she wouldn't bake them long enough, so they're kind of mealy and
gross.
Good, like her macaroni and cheese was great. She would bake it in the oven with white cheddar and put breadcrumbs on top. That was great, and she would make some good roast sometimes. But some of her stuff was like,
that's good.
Yeah, well, my dad.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
and you had to sit there and eat it. And you had to sit there and eat it too.
Funny stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, and then like if you were lucky, if you were a kid and you couldn't go out till Saturday, Friday nights you might have a horror show on television, and then if you lived close enough to a movie theater, maybe Saturday there'd be a movie you could walk to or whatever. But by the time we had cars, it was like It was like all no holds barred or whatever. And I'm sure it was that way in the 50s too.
No,
I mean these movies are not made for adults.
Teenagers.
So. Adults.
There was the Sanders movie theater in Brooklyn where I lived. In the on like Saturday afternoons, they would have matinees. I think from like 10 to 3 or whatever. So that's where I saw 1 million years BC, and all those Hammer movies and stuff. And then in the afternoon, from I don't know, like 5 o'clock onwards, they would show the more adult fare, like Camelot and various musicals and stuff like that.
They didn't do that where I live. It was the same. It was whatever the movie was. That was it all day. They didn't have kids programming, except in the summer maybe they did. But no, that's better than we had. But at any rate, I mean, by the time we were around, I mean, AIP was still making movies. I did see Frankenstein Conquers the World and Tarzan the Valley of Gold and a couple of other ones, but by that time when I was out in the mid-60s with my parents, AIP was doing a lot of action, a lot of biker movies, and they had changed completely. They were still doing, every once in a while they would still do something. There'd always be a monster movie here and there from somebody, but they were kind of done with, because after the Edgar Allan Poe movies, they started concentrating on the beach party movies. So the idea of the teenager changed from, those old 50s B movies, I guess, to the Poe movies, to the beach party, to the biker. And then after that, it was just like, I mean, sure they did horror movies. They would import things here and there and do stuff like that. But they were a different company.
In a lot of ways,
but,
the audience, I guess, changed a bit. But at the same time,
they got older.
They were importing a lot of Hammer films, and that sort of picked up the void.
They were importing independent movies. They were putting movies on television too, but they would never go in theatrically, and they would either get them dubbed or redub them, and they would go straight to television. If they thought a Godzilla movie was popular enough, they would put it in a theater and redub it. But after a while, it just kind of died out. And there were other companies. other independent companies, Amicus. Then you had Hammer, coming in at later 50s, around, and then. But I saw all the Hammer stuff on television. I never saw, except maybe one movie in the theater, 2 movies maybe. All the Hammer stuff was always television, which is where I saw, like, I would say 70% of all my B horror movies
and
was on television.
And I think that's the time when, TV really started to take over.
Well, if you look at a grid from the 60s, which I did a couple of years ago, you'll see that even maybe through the early 70s, but I know in the 60s, every night the 3 networks rotated in a movie, whether it was a made-for-TV movie or a network premiere movie, and it would be like they kind of worked with each other, and each day you would get something, and inevitably you would get a Hammer movie or something. There was a lot of
they
TV
did, and it was
almost
like a special presentation, or like a Sunday afternoon movie, and they'd show. Yeah.
Well, they had ABC Monday Night Movie when football wasn't happening. NBC.
Yeah.
And then the ABC movie.
So, and then
NBC,
ABC, CBS. CBS played instead of having the Tonight Show was a big draw for a lot of people. So CBS countered that by playing movies. Yeah, late night movies.
Late night movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they played a lot of Hammer movies on there.
I can remember watching the movie, and they would always show coming attractions for next week, and if it was like a good movie, it's like, oh boy, I can't wait.
No, definitely, yeah. Theatrically, it was by the later 60s. They started going more into action movies, and then you started getting. It always was like there would be a movie and it'd be a big hit. You'd get a European knockoff of it. So then they were. Then after the Dirty Harry, you'd get a bunch of cop movies, and after The Exorcist, you get a bunch of Exorcist movies, and then you have the zombie movie, you get a bunch of zombie movies. So you still get all that kind of stuff. But AIP was doing I just remember them doing mainly action movies, and they would import a few horror movies, but their heyday was I think was in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, that's the day the world ended. It's worth checking out. It's on YouTube, except you look for the right video, because one person has this video and it has commercials every 3 minutes. Another person has this video and it didn't have any commercials, and it's also available free with ads, which you'll get some commercials on there. But
good.
It's worth checking out just for fun.
Exactly.
Just for a Saturday afternoon.
Had the commercials every 5 minutes.
Feature.
Oh, perfect.
I actually found
one. But it's
a
good movie. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's the perfect example of a. Right.
It can get a little boring in the middle, but just stay with it. It should. You know what? It shouldn't have been 80 minutes. It should have been 75 minutes. They could have cut 5 minutes out of this movie, real easy, and it would have been a little bit better. But whatever. It is what it was. It was probably on their double bill. It was probably the top billed movie. So
they
got 80
from
minutes.
10,000 Leagues, and that's the one where it looked like a giant iguana below the ocean. Yeah, one of those. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for this week's movies. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more B movies. In the meantime,
and in the meantime, Roddy,
more B movies.
One scientist foresaw the day the world ended.
There are 2 forms of life fighting for survival out here in this valley, and only one of them can win.
I'll talk to the girls in the morning.
The girls?
Yes. They should bear children as soon as possible. Being a scientist, he did not consider human emotions.
No one takes my gun.
Tony, look out! He did not know about the uninhibited exhibitionism of a striptease dancer. He'd forgotten about the power of love and knew nothing about the vicious force of jealousy.
Nothing ever come easy to me.
Don't touch me. I can't stand you. Tony, let the little girl go.
But more thrilling, more exciting, more mystifying is the monster. The mutation by atomic energy, part man, part beast, salaciously watching women as they bathe. A monster such as the eyes of man has never before seen. Killing one by one each of the few living men, hunting out the most beautiful of the remaining women to take as his mate.